Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel once again. As you saw the intro, so in today's video we are going to talk about the interview experience of 2022 pass out candidates. So the very first question which every interviewer asks you all is introduce yourself, or they ask that tell me about yourself. So for this question I suggest every candidate to prepare one paragraph and by heart it. So this is not going to help you only for one company, but this will help you for every company's interview which you will appear, because your introduction is very important. It shows how well you communicate with the interviewer or how is your communication skills. So I'm going to make a dedicated video on how to make your introduction, what all things to include in it. Or so subscribe the channel if you have not done it, so you'll be notified when I'll make that video. Next question is questions based on the projects which you have mentioned in your resume. So very important thing to note over here, projects which you know properly, or the projects which about which you have clear idea, mention only those projects in your resume. Don't put any random projects from internet or any projects about which you don't have any idea, because startup companies like Zeus, they ask question more and more on projects, whether you have proper knowledge of project which you have made or not. Now next, they also say you to present your screen and show the project code, or run your projects and show it to them. Now these things depend on interviewer whether they are asking or not. It is not compulsory that every GUS interviewer will ask you this. Next question is tell me about the code which you have done in your assessment. So yeah, few interviewer of GUS learning, they also ask whether do you remember the code which you have done in your assessment, how you did it, what was your approach, and they will discuss about that in your interview. Now once the questions are over regarding projects and assessment and introduction, they move to technical skills which you have mentioned in your resume, and they only ask question which are mentioned by you in your resume. If you have mentioned Python, SQL, they will ask question on that. If you have mentioned HTML, CSS, JavaScript and all, they will ask question on that only. So look into it that only tech skills which you know, mention only those things in resume. Don't write extra things, because they will assume that if you have written this thing in your resume, then you know it. So even if you are very beginner in all those tech skills, and you think okay, let me include this in my resume, it will increase the value. No, this is completely wrong. If you'll write anything in which you have very less knowledge, like if you will write Java and you are a Python candidate, you know Python and you are beginner in Java, if you write that in your resume, interviewer will think that you know Java too. So they will start asking question based on Java, which will create a problem for you. So now next set of questions are displayed on your screen. One is rate yourself in Python out of 10. So as you will say 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, they will ask question on that level only. So tell whatever your actual level is, whether you are beginner, intermediate or anything. Next question is rate yourself in JavaScript out of 10. Then explain polymorphism with example. So in all those questions, like when they are asking polymorphism with example, you don't have to just say the definition and you have to stop. Tell them the definition, explain it in your language, and then give a very relevant example and explain that example too. Until and unless interviewer is not stopping you or asking next question, keep on explaining the topic so that he comes to know that you know the topic very well. Now next is explain inheritance in detail. So now when this question is asked, don't just tell the definition of inheritance. Tell them about the types of inheritance along with the examples. Okay. What are joins in SQL, what is normalization, what are triggers. So all your interview questions just depend on what you have mentioned in your resume and how you introduce yourself. So obviously if you have written Python and SQL, they will ask this type of questions. Now almost every candidate knows HTML and CSS, so they mention this in their resume. And even GUS learning is somewhat more inclined towards front end development and back end development. I can say full stack development. So they ask question on this HTML CSS also. So you can see the question on screen, that is what are tags in HTML. So what are tags in HTML, and tell some example of tags which don't have closing tag. What are different ways to include CSS in HTML. What are selectors in CSS? Differentiate between div tag and span. Explain the box sizing property and what is API. Now after the technical questions, they also ask few aptitude based question in which they can ask anything. It depends on interviewer. They can ask numerical or verbal or anything which depend on interviewers. So you can see this question on the screen. Generally they ask you two questions. If you are not able to answer the first one, and if you can answer the first one, they will not ask you the second one. They come to know about your IQ. Now after that they ask you to present your screen, and they can ask you a web development question or any coding question to code it. So one question is, they ask one candidate to make a box and align it in center of the screen, and another question to the same candidate was, write a code to convert an integer into minute and second format. So they gave an example that take an integer which is equal to 630, and you have to convert it into the minute and second format. So you can open any online IDE or offline IDE, and you can discuss with them on the question regarding input and output properly, and you can select your convenient language and you can write that code. Now few coding question to other candidates were, write a program for Fibonacci series, and if you have written it properly, they may ask you to convert it into function. Write a Fibonacci series using functions. They may also ask you to write recursive program for any code. Another question was, add two integers without using plus operator or plus minus multiplication and dividend operator. This is very popular question. Many interviewer ask this irrespective of the company. So now the last question which they ask you is, do you have any questions for the interviewer? So I suggest that you should definitely ask one question to the interviewer, and you should be prepared for that one question. Don't say that I don't have any question. Just ask one question, whether it is about work culture of the company or how was my interview, can you rate it. So if it fits in their protocol, so they will tell you about your interview. Otherwise they will say that we'll let you know in another round. So few important tips I would like to give you, that always be interactive with the interviewer. Ask the question at the last about the company or about the interviewer, about the role which you are applying, what kind of work they do. So don't get panic in any interview, just be interactive with them like your friends. Now here are the few HR interview questions from Zeus Learning. So first is obviously introduce yourself. Second is, tell me about kind of project you have done. Kind of project. It is not tell me about the project. What kind of project it was, what you did, how were your team partners, etc. And then what do you know about Zeus Learning? Why you want to join Zeus Learning? Then why should we hire you? Tell me more about your strength and weakness. Do you have any plans for further study? All this type of question HR generally asks. So answering HR question is very tricky and bit difficult for many candidates. So I'll make a dedicated video on how to answer HR question. Like, do you have any plan for further study? How to answer that? Obviously you have to say no, because you are applying for an interview. How can you plan for higher studies? And what are your weakness? This is one of the most important HR question which every company interviewer asks, and how to answer it. Okay, so I'll talk about all this in my next video, when I'll make a dedicated video on how to answer HR question. Okay, I'm going to make a dedicated video on technical interview too, that how to study, from where to study, how to practice coding if you have not done coding yet. If you are not from computer IT background, then how you should start coding, at least for cracking interview and aptitude questions of few companies. So thank you everyone for watching out this video. Please hit the subscribe button and press the bell icon for further notification. Also do like, share and comment down your queries below.